Just turn on the news, scroll through your social media feed. It feels like you just can't escape it. That constant pounding drumbeat of conflict. All over the world, we see these images of war, and we hear leaders promising us that there's only one path to peace: total, undeniable victory. The whole idea is that safety and security can only happen by absolutely crushing the opponent. But today, we're going to take a step back and challenge that entire premise. So yeah, let's dive right into the heart of it. Does winning a war, really winning it decisively, does that actually lead to a lasting peace? Or does it just end up planting the seeds for the next fight? It's a question that feels so urgent right now. But it's wild? The most powerful answer might not come from some modern military expert. It actually comes from a teaching that's over 2,500 years old. So, this perspective we're digging into today comes from the Buddha. Specifically, it's from a collection of his teachings called the Dhammapada. Now, this text is a real cornerstone of early Buddhist thinking. It's part of what's called the Pali Canon. And tucked away inside it, there is this one single verse that just completely turns the modern logic of warfare on its head. Let's just let that sink in for a second. I'm going to read it again, slowly. Victory breeds hatred. The defeated sleep in sorrow. The peaceful sleep happily, having given up victory and defeat. Wow. In just a handful of words, this verse gives us this totally radical diagnosis of our global condition, and maybe even a path towards a real, genuine peace. So for the rest of our time together, we are going to unpack this ancient piece of wisdom, bit by bit, and see how it applies to, well, pretty much everything. Okay, let's start with that first line, because it's an absolute bombshell. Victory breeds hatred. That cuts directly against everything we're taught, right? We're told that victory is the goal, it's the finish line, the resolution. But this teaching is telling us that what we call victory, it isn't an end at all. It's actually the beginning of a whole new and maybe even worse problem. It's a trap. The promise we hear from so many leaders today sounds so simple, and that's what makes it so appealing. If we can just get that decisive military victory, all our problems will be over. We'll be secure, our people will be safe, and peace will finally be here. But see, that whole logic is based on one huge assumption, that the opponent, once they're beaten, will just accept their loss and, poof, disappear as a threat. But this ancient wisdom shows us that this is a really profound and, honestly, a dangerous misunderstanding of how people actually work. Look at this. It's like two sides of a poisoned coin. So on one side, you have the victor. Do they find peace? Nope. Instead, they've just created a deeply resentful enemy. Now they have to live in constant fear of revenge, spending billions on defense, building higher and higher walls. And then, on the other side, you have the defeated. They don't just go away. Their sorrow and their humiliation starts to curdle, turning into this deep-seated anger. That trauma gets nursed and, this is the crucial part, it gets passed down to the next generation, which all but guarantees the whole bloody conflict is going to erupt all over again. It's a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle. And this gets us to the Buddhist idea of karma. Now, a lot of people misunderstand this as some kind of mystical, cosmic justice system, but it's not, really. It's actually a very practical, down-to-earth law. The action itself contains the result. It's just like it says here. You just can't plant the seeds of violence and then be surprised when you don't harvest the fruits of peace. The harvest is always determined by the seed you plant. A path that's paved with the tools of war can only ever lead to one place: more war. So this brings us to the second part of the verse, and, well, this is arguably the most mind-bending part. The peaceful sleep happily, having given up victory and defeat. Okay, so if chasing victory is a trap, what's the alternative? And the answer isn't just to lose. It's something way more radical than that. This is such a critical distinction. The Buddha isn't telling people to just passively surrender, to let injustice happen. That would still be playing the game of winning and losing. You'd just be choosing to lose. No, the teaching here is to stop playing the game altogether. It's a conscious, powerful choice to just disengage from the entire idea that one side has to dominate the other. It's about finally recognizing that the battlefield itself is the problem. I love this analogy. Just imagine a desperate tug-of-war. You've got both sides straining, digging their heels in, completely consumed by the fight. Their entire world is defined by that rope and the person on the other end. Now, as long as they're both pulling, they are literally bound to each other in this state of conflict. But what happens if one side makes a conscious shift? They don't try to pull harder, and they don't just give up and get dragged through the mud. They simply let go of the rope. And in that instant, what happens? The tension is gone. The struggle is over. The game has ended. The other guy might stumble backwards, but the conflict itself has dissolved. That is what it means to give up victory and defeat. Now, it's pretty easy to see how this works in the abstract, with nations and armies. But the Buddhist teachings were always meant to be super practical and personal. The real source of all these massive global conflicts, it isn't really a border dispute or a fight over resources. The source is much, much closer to home. Yeah, the ultimate battlefield is the human ego. Think about it. When a person or a whole nation becomes obsessed with winning, what's really driving them? It's the ego's desperate, desperate need to be validated. It's that little voice in our head that's always whispering, I'm right and you're wrong. I'm strong, you're weak. I have to prove I exist by making you smaller. It's all based on this illusion that we're this solid, separate me that's in competition with every other you. So fighting a war to satisfy that illusion, whether it's on a global scale or just in your own living room, from this perspective, it's a kind of madness. So, okay, how do we actually use this as we watch what's happening in the world? Well, first, when you see a leader promising total victory, you can start to see them not as strong, but as someone trapped in this delusion that you can somehow extinguish hatred by pouring more hatred on it. Second, we have to guard our own minds. It's so easy to get swept up in that cheerleader mentality of war, picking a side and rooting for them like it's a football game. This teaching asks us to take a step back from all that. Third, we have to really let it sink in that winning through violence doesn't end suffering. It just puts it on a payment plan for the future. And finally, we can start to look for and support solutions that exist outside of that simplistic win-lose framework, solutions that are about compromise and understanding and letting go of the rope. And this is where it gets really personal. Forget geopolitics for just a second. Think about the last argument you had, maybe with your partner or a friend or even just some random person on the internet. How much of your energy was just focused on winning, on proving you were right and they were wrong? And let's say you won. You got the last word and they went silent, probably angry or humiliated. Did you feel peace in that moment? Or did you just feel that tension still hanging in the air, knowing you just damaged a connection to satisfy your ego? So let's come back to the full verse one last time, now that we've kind of looked at it from all these different angles. Victory breeds hatred, the defeated sleep in sorrow. The peaceful sleep happily, having given up victory and defeat. The path to happiness, the path to a mind that can actually be at rest, it's not found in dominating other people. It's found in the wisdom and the courage to just release the whole idea of domination itself, to let go of that rope, whether it's on the world stage or right here in our own hearts. And that leaves us with a really personal question to carry with us, right? As you go about your day, as you engage with the news or with the people in your life, you can just ask yourself, am I pulling on the rope? Am I just fighting to win? Or am I ready to let it go, to step off the battlefield of my own ego and actually find some peace? That choice in any given moment really does have the power to change everything.